I'm going to make you work this morning. So if you're not sitting by somebody, you need to move by somebody because we're going to have a little discussion. What is the difference between wisdom and knowledge? So we're going to take a few minutes amongst yourselves and discuss what is the difference between wisdom and knowledge. And then we'll come back and we will continue this discussion. So, did you come up, and I didn't give you much time to discuss, but that's okay. You guys are having a good discussion. Is there a difference between wisdom and knowledge? Yes. What is the difference between wisdom and knowledge?
We decided that knowledge is like book learning, but wisdom is heart learning.
Very good. I like that. One is like book learning and one is like heart. Wisdom's like heart, knowledge is book. Is that pretty much? Go ahead.
Knowledge will be your facts, and wisdom is what you do.
Yep. So I like that as well.
I didn't catch the
This is what I found. Wisdom is the ability to discern or judge what is true or lasting. Knowledge is information gained through experience and reasoning. Can you have knowledge without wisdom?
Yes.
Can you have wisdom without knowledge? See, I told you I was going to make you work this morning. It's quite amazing that when we read out of this, the Kings, about what Solomon did. He could have asked for anything. God said, "What do you want?" He could have said, "Give me the world, give me billions and billions of dollars," and whatever the currency was back then. He didn't. He goes, "Give me the wisdom to be able to rule. Give me the heart to understand how to rule the people," which was quite amazing for an individual like Solomon. Solomon came from a very privileged family, unlike David. I can't talk in that tongue. David was a shepherd. He came from the fields. He had to work. He understood what work was. Solomon was David's son, who he was probably spoiled his whole life. Never went out, as far as we know, he never went out to battle, never really did anything. And now he's thrust into this power of being the king of Israel, his father, David, had united the whole kingdom together. And now he had the responsibility to rule this kingdom. And what did he ask for? Was wisdom. Pretty amazing to me to think that a young individual like Solomon would ask for that. But if you read on the rest of the story, what Solomon did later on in his life, did he follow and continue to do what the Lord asked of him? Don't know the answer? Go into Kings, 1 Kings, and read about what Solomon did later on in his life. He did not stay true to God. Then we go into Ephesians, and it says, "Be careful then how you live, not as unwise people, but wise people, making the most of your time because the days are evil. I think we live in a world, and you read that, and you turn on the news, and you see what's going on in our world and our country, you're probably thinking, well, these are days of evil. How am I wise in a world that seems to be so set upon being more on knowledge than to being wise? It's hard. It's hard to use our wisdom that comes from God in a world that seems so set on being divided and angry. In a world that at some point seems that they want to throw Christ and God out. Instead of having God's wisdom, we want to use knowledge. Because you know what? Knowledge is great. I'm so knowledgeable, and because of this knowledge, I know everything. One thing that I've learned over my lifetime is that the more I learn, the more knowledge I pick up, the least I know. I come to the point where I don't really know much. But we, in a world today, we want to use knowledge to get what we want. One of the things that it talked about what a wise judgment is, and I'm going to have to read it because I can't remember it. Being wise and being fruitful is being meek, pure, peaceful, gentle, easy, centered, merciful, impartial, and unhypocritical. Those who get my email, that's pretty similar to what? What's at the end of my email? Fruit of the Spirit, which are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I wrote them down this time so I could get them all. That's being wise. Does it surprise us that the fruit of the Spirit consists of what wisdom should be? Once again, we live in a world that, do we follow these? Are we peaceful? Are we loving? Are we being joyful? Is there peace? Is there patience? Is there kindness? Is there goodness? Is there faithfulness and gentleness in the world that we live in today? When we put ourselves more into what we believe in our politics or what we believe in whatever it may be. I'm more of a Democrat or I'm more of a Republican, and you know what? I hate Donald Trump because he's the president of the United States, or I hate Nancy Pelosi because she's a Democrat and I can't stand them. Is that very Christ-like? Is that living by the fruits of the Spirit? And is that being wise when we use our knowledge instead of being wise? We turn on the news and it's all about hate, hate, hate. I don't know if you read about it yesterday. There was protests in Seattle where there was one group who was the Second Amendment. They were out they were having a march, and then some other group that was wanting to protest didn't like what they were protesting, so it ended up being a big fight, and the police had to come in and separate them. Is that wise? Is that the fruit of the Spirit? We have an example, I am the bread of life, who teaches us how to live. Are we living by what the bread of life has taught us to live? Are we being loving, caring, peaceful, kindness, gentleness, self-control, patience, and all those? Are we living under our own knowledge, trying to do what we want to do in this world that tells us that's what we should be doing? Are we going down a different path, but Jesus has taught us to go down? To be loving, caring, kindness. And you're going to continue to hear these fruits of the Spirit, because that is what and how we should be living our lives. When we don't live by that, this last week, you heard I went to D.C., and we went into the Holocaust Museum. I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Holocaust Museum. If you haven't, you need to. Because when we live by knowledge and we don't follow the wisdom of God, this is what happens. Millions of people die because people didn't stand up, because they didn't have the wisdom of God in their hearts. Imagine if the church, even the United States at that time, had an opportunity to stand up and to stop this, but they had knowledge about it, but they didn't have the wisdom. and 6 million people died. You walk through a part of the museum where they have shoes that were taken from those that were rounded up, taken out of their houses. And you walk through and you can still smell the shoes, the leather. And you look at these shoes and you go, each one of these shoes represents a person. Imagine if the people at that time had the wisdom to stand up and say, no, we're not going to do this. Millions of people could have been saved. We are in a time in our country where we need to stand up and say, well, I'm not about knowledge. I want to be wise, and I want to be wise in God's ways. Does that mean you can't not like something? Yeah. I'm not saying you can't dislike or like something because you might not agree with them. But how do you react? Do you react out of hate? Because when you act out of hate, hate builds on hate. And the more we hate, the more hate builds. And it builds up. And that's how we get the Holocaust. So when we as Christians need to stand up and make the choice to say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We are going to love as Jesus has taught us to love. It's hard. Because I have my way of thinking on things. And yeah, there's times when I get on the TV and I see some person that I might not agree with, and I'm yelling at the TV, calling them all kinds of names. But is that effective? Is that efficient? Is that loving? Is that kind? Is that patience? Is that joy? No. And when Jesus talks about in John, I am the bread of life, a lot of people think this is talking about communion, about the Last Supper. I don't think this is what John is intending here. Because if you go to John chapter 13 in John, that's where he starts talking about the Last Supper. He's talking about himself. This is my flesh. This is my blood. You need to be a part of this. If you're not a part of this, then you're not a part of me. And he set the example by what he did after, or what he did on the cross. He set the example. He could have said, no, I have the knowledge. I'm not going to the cross. I'm going to follow Satan because I can rule the world and I can do whatever I want. But he had wisdom and said, I'm going to go to the cross and I'm going to die for each and every one of you because I love you. And that's what I have to do. And this is the bread, and this is my body, and this is my blood. And I'm going to die for you. Are you going to be a part of that? Are you going to come with me because I love you? Are you going to take that love that I've shown you, and are you going to show that to others? Or are you going to go out and hate? It's time we especially the church, need to make a decision. Are we a church of love, or are we a church of hate? Are we a church that wants to do God's work? Are we a church that wants to be the bread of life, or do we want to be a church where we more concentrate on what's going on in the world and being more of the world? Does that mean that we're not out in the world? Yes, we're out in the world like what we did yesterday, being out at Northwest Harvest, or going out to Camp Hope. Yes, we need to be out in the world, but when we're out in the world, it needs to be out with love and grace. If we're not doing that, then we're not doing the work of God. And I personally want to be doing the work of God. After seeing, and you've read about the Holocaust, but when you actually see the shoes and you see what happened, when we don't, it breaks your heart. And the only way we can do that is by accepting Jesus Christ into our heart and being of Jesus Christ and following Jesus Christ. You know, and that might require us going to the cross. Let's hope it doesn't go to that point, but it might require that. And are we willing to do that? Are we willing to put ourselves out for other people like Jesus did for us? Do we choose knowledge or do we choose wisdom? Do we choose hate or do we choose Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, that died for us on the cross and rose again and now sits at the right hand of the Father, waiting for us to do and to be like him? I'm ready to be more like Christ. Are you?